What about genomics? You know, Craig Venter, the well-known American geneticist, actually did an analysis of the human genome. It took years and years and years, and at one stage it would cost you $200,000 to do an analysis of your genes. Now you can do it for $800. Can you imagine that? $800. So Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, has found out that one of his genes might have a trigger in it that gives him Parkinson's disease when he's in his 60s. Now he's young, he's not even 40, he's 38, I think, 38, 39. But this gives him an opportunity by seeing his genetic code. He's now working with scientists to maybe come up with a way that that gene that provides the trigger that could give him Parkinson's might change. And you know what's changing genomics? Technology, innovation, and creativity. And do you think that it's only from America that stuff like this can be done? That's not correct. When Arthur C. Clarke was still alive and living right here in Sri Lanka, he was writing about things like this that was fiction, and now it's fact. Biohacking. What about the new biological hazards, great diseases, dengue fever, a big problem in a country like this, or countries like Thailand, or countries like Singapore. And now there'll be new ways in which one will be able to tackle some of the most complex diseases. In fact, here's a picture. Oh wait, wrong picture. But we will probably find a way using genetic codes and using new kinds of analysis with innovation and creativity that might solve some of the world's most serious diseases. Biofuels. Do you know that Brazil now is reliant upon biofuels and not necessarily only petrol and gasoline and oil, because they're growing palm oil and they're making fuel out of palm oil. In fact, there are many, many countries now that are rushing to make palm oil because that's going to be the way. Even Richard Branson wants to use palm oil for jet fuel for Virgin Atlantic Airlines. Now, would you fly in a plane whose petrol is made not of aviation fuel of the traditional kind, but palm oil fuel? Would you fly in that plane? Sorry, what was that? I didn't quite hear the yes. I didn't quite hear the no. Everyone seems to be dumbfounded. Can a plane fly on palm oil? Answer is yes. Who would have thought that? Innovation, creativity, this is something that has got some value. Okay, who are these two guys? These are two scientists in America who are working on what could be conceivably in the next 5 years a cure for cancer. A cure for cancer, I kid you not. A cure for cancer. It seems unlikely because there are many cancers to cure. But can you imagine if in our lifetime, in the next decade, we find a way in which the genetic makeup of certain key cancers can actually be solved? It would be incredible. Is it out of the question? Is it something that is just fantasy? What do you think? Sorry, what was that? Tommy, no one said a word. Maybe everyone is just dumbstruck by the very thought of it. Okay, here we are. How many of you would like to grow your own hamburger in a laboratory? Well, here we are. Here is a lab-grown hamburger that's due to be served up. Only costs $330,000 to make. But can you imagine chicken tikka being made in a laboratory? Frankly, I'd prefer to have it at here at the Grand Hotel rather than I would in a lab. It would probably work out much, much cheaper, or in the basement of the shopping mall just next door. But anyway, this is just an idea of what's going on. By the way, we spoke about it can print any feature that can be enveloped into a cube 6 by 6 meters. That's a 3D printer printing 6 by 6 meters. And this, it's by a product called Monolite. It's going to be used for the building industry. This products that can be taken from the 3D printing device and then put directly onto the building as part of the construction process. Isn't that incredible that this might be controlled by a mobile phone or a mobile device? Innovation and creativity. Here we are. Here are physicists that are creating a working transistor from a single atom. Do you know how big an atom is? Do you know how thin a hair is? Well, a single atom is so small that even with a huge particle, with special technology, it would be difficult to even see it. You know, in Switzerland, there's a large 26-mile underground circle where they're trying to actually isolate a single atom and trying to mimic what happened when the universe actually began. So we really are very much in an information age, and the interesting thing about the information age is it's an age of innovation. And why I keep saying I believe so much in Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan creativity is, in an age of innovation and an age of information, you have the tools in your fingertips, because it's also an age of disruption, it's an age of acceleration, and whatever can be information will become information. So, lots of things to consider. The traffic light has turned green, so you can go ahead and you can think the most crazy, ridiculous things, as I've tried to show you with these different industries. And the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, that all of this means that things are possible. So it's not just having a wacky idea and people saying to you, well, how are you going to possibly do that? All I can say to you is, Hyundai Obalastida. You've got to be ready for it. Okay, so the best way to predict the future is to invent it. You know who Alan Kay is? Alan Kay is the guy who invented the mouse. Not the mouse that squeaks, the mouse that you use in your hand that women are not afraid of. And I was very pleased to see lots of more women. We've got to make women are very, very important. Ladies, we must make sure that you also invent something. You've got great intuition. Women are supposed to have better emotional maturity than men. That's what my wife always tells me. And I've told her that that can't be possible because men control the world. And she said, the reason we have so many problems in the world is because you guys don't know what you're doing. Please get some women to run the world, just exactly in the same way as the German President Angela Merkel is doing, and the new President of Malawi is doing, and as Mrs. Bandaranaike did when she became the very first Prime Minister, female Prime Minister in the world. Okay, so Alan Kay, very well known. Now, here's something that Oprah Winfrey said. Tell me if you believe in this. If you change your attitude about these things, it's quite possible that you could change your attitude and come up with an incredible new form of invention. Very possible. So the answer has to be yes. You've got to really think differently, change your attitude, because you could come up with something here in Sri Lanka that could be world-beating. And just remember, here's an interesting phrase: if you make little plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood. Exactly as Shamal had said earlier today when he spoke, think big. And then when you think big, think bigger. And then when you think bigger, think even bigger. Because in that way, that'll be the way to really make some progress. George Bernard Shaw, anyone heard of George Bernard Shaw? He was an interesting thinker, an innovator in his time, a writer and a playwright. Look what he said: reasonable men adapt themselves to their environment. Unreasonable men try to adapt their environment to themselves. Therefore, all the progress is the result of the efforts of unreasonable men and women, of course. He didn't put in women, but I'm just saying that because I can see those girls at the back there smiling, because you girls are thinking, ha, 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 ha. What about the women and unreasonable women? Gentlemen, there's no such thing as an unreasonable woman. I can guarantee you that. Okay, so here we are. You've got to learn how to learn. And learning how to learn is something that the ICTA will definitely be helping you with some of the interesting new plans over the next 2 to 3 years that they'll be bringing in to encourage innovation and creativity in Sri Lanka. So let me give you some examples of what you need to think of. Think of the frames of reference. That's number one. Critical thinking. Make sure that your thinking is out of the box, not in the box, because in the box means you're cramped. Out of the box. Your perception has got to change. And just think of the way perception, thinking out of the box, and frames of reference have moved just in the phone business. And I thought that what I'd do is give just an example of some of the organic thinking that went into what Apple did with the Apple phone. And I'd like to ask a question first. Are telecom companies creative? What do you think? Excuse me, anybody still here? Yeah, no? Yes? Well, let's have a look. These are key telecom values. Reliability, yes, very important. Dependability, yes, very important. Stability, yes, very important. What about creative values? Creative values create hits. It's completely unpredictable and always full of surprises. Which is better, telecom values or creative values? What do you think? Here's some creative values that were brought into telecom values. M-Pesa, which Tommy spoke about earlier today, is the payment system in Kenya that now accounts for 40% of Kenya's GDP. M-Pesa, here you can pay for anything with your phone in Kenya, from a can of Coca-Cola to your child's school fees to a motor car, anything you like, just pay by pointing your phone. Safaricom is part of Vodacom, which is part of Vodafone, but there's good creative thinking with telecom thinking. Life insurance, MTN and Tigo, two big African telcos. MTN, the biggest telco in Africa, 170 million subscribers, and the biggest telco provider in Nigeria, now selling life insurance on the phone, very successful product. And look at what Apple started with. Just a mere 5 years ago, of course, being creative, mail, text messaging, then they added a couple of other things, added a few more, music and navigation, and then of course photography. Of course they weren't the first. Nokia were amongst the first to develop really good camera technology with Zeiss, the famous German lens makers. And then of course applications. I just picked up some stuff on the web before I came down to do this. I don't know if you are familiar with the unofficial Apple web log. It's an interesting site that tells you what's going on inside Apple. It's leaks from inside Apple, from Apple employees. And this is the latest information. 315 million iPhones and iPads sold in the first half of, in the last half of last year. 62 million phones in 2011. There are 362 Apple stores. How many applications on Apple have now been sold, do you think, total? 25 billion. 25 billion. 25 billion, and they get 30% of every one of those 25 billion. And how many apps do you think are available on an Apple device, iPad and iPhone? 585,000. And believe it or not, in the last quarter of last year, Apple sold more iPads than any PC maker sold PCs. Now think of that. Apple sold more iPads than any PC maker, Dell, HP, Lenovo, than sold PCs. What does that tell you about the future? And what does that tell you about your creativity and your innovation? So Apple, there it is, one of the great stars, the most valuable company on the US stock exchange. You know what Apple is saying to everyone else? I'm going to drink your milkshake. That's what they're going to say, and they're saying it every day. There's Tom Selleck, I'm going to drink your milkshake. So how did this happen? Here's Sony Ericsson. They didn't do so well. Their Xperia model, great design, but you know what? Didn't work. It took a heroic leap of imagination, creativity, innovation. Do you think Sri Lankans have creativity and innovation? You tell me.